Test, test, test. All right. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So, welcome to our second live stream on the FM podcast. Thank you for clicking on the video. Now, let's go ahead and get started into our live stream. Now, I'm your host, the Dark Knight. Now, I'm here talking about the 2024 presidential election and why this matters to men. So we're going to be going over the top 10 reasons that Donald Trump will win the presidential election for 2024 and why this is a big deal for men. Excuse me. Now, I need everyone watching this video, make sure that you hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button, make sure you give us a follow, make sure you hit the like button on the video on your way in as well. There is no other figure on YouTube that is breaking down and analyzing the media propaganda bias like the world's darkest detective. So again, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well, give us a follow, make sure you like a few of our videos. We got a couple in store coming up. We got a few projects that we're working on, so make sure you hit that like button. Now, if you are new to the channel, what we like to do is we like to analyze and investigate the media's propaganda when it comes to the news, movies, television. We break down all these avenues of propaganda that the media likes to push, and we investigate this from a intersectional dynamics. So if you're familiar with our channel, you may be wondering why we are covering politics and what this actually has to do with the type of content that we push on this channel and the topics that we cover. Excuse me. Make sure I got this set up. This is only my second live stream, so again, make sure you give us a like. Make sure you hit that follow button. Let me go ahead and get this set up. So I got a clip that I'm going to get loaded up. Let's see. All right, give me 1 second. All right, here we go. So, as I was stating, now on this channel we talk about the propaganda that the media likes to push from an intersectional dynamics perspective. So I recently watched a clip, and this is what I'm getting loaded up right now. I recently watched a clip on the Megyn Kelly show, and I thought, how could I actually tie what we do on this channel on a regular basis to why I'm covering this topic tonight? And I think that this Blackman on the Megyn Kelly show, he breaks it down in such a way that I'm going to let him tell you. And so I'm going to play a little snippet of this, and we're going to talk about it on the other side. So give me a second, I'm going to load this up. All right. Here we go.
To black men or when it's time for an election. And this is not even specific to Kamala Harris. The Democratic Party is a party of matriarchy and post-second wave feminism. They are not a party that knows how to speak to men, largely because it is a party that resents men. And there are no men, obviously they have issues with straight white men, unless they're trying to elect them president like Joe Biden. But they have have a particular antipathy towards black men who don't carry the flag in the same way that black women do. And so what you see Kamala Harris trying to do is address the problem that's clear that she has with black men and go on doing black media. And, she had President Barack Obama out in Pittsburgh last week, hectoring and lecturing black men at her campaign site. So this is a problem that the party has. This is a structural problem. This is not a problem about one specific candidate. A party that upholds the matriarchy and thinks that masculinity is toxic is going to have a problem speaking to men. And what I see, particularly from her and her surrogates, is that they are deaf to the needs of black men. And this is why they speak in sign language: shame, insults, guilt, and nagging. And that is their primary method of communication when it comes to this specific demographic group.
I have to say, I really don't want to hear it. I don't want to.
All right. So, if you saw that clip, you'd realize that, he stated a lot in that clip. So, to elaborate on what he's talking about, in this election cycle, you will hear a lot about the gender divide as it pertains to polling voters, men and women, and even more so, black men. The appeal to men and women and the appeal to black men as well. And to zero in on what this young man stated, the Democratic Party is the party of matriarchy and post-second wave feminism. And he even goes on to state that the Democratic Party resents men. And this isn't hard to believe, with most Democratic Party voters showing a disdain for traditional masculinity by labeling it toxic masculinity. Now, toxic masculinity, that's a term that those in the manosphere and the red pill are used to hearing, right? These are terms that one of the major political parties is using, and at the same time looking to redefine masculinity. So, excuse me, got a few more clips I got lined up here. Hold on. Let's see here. Now, excuse me. If we look at both of the political platforms in 2024, you will see pro-women policies such as abortion and the socialization of child care services, I'll say, that are being pushed by mostly Democrats, while the Republican Party promotes policies that are more male-centered, such as the rejection of trans ideology, especially in sports, and the revitalization of the traditional nuclear family. I'm going to get this video loaded because I have another clip I want to play on the back end before we get into our top 10. So bear with me. This is only my second live stream. Again, make sure you hit that like button. Give us a follow by hitting that subscribe button. You're not going to get any kind of content like this on YouTube, but only on the FM podcast with me, your host, the Blackman. So, excuse me. Now, during this presidential election cycle, you will see a big emphasis on the gender divide in voting. So, you're going to see a propaganda push to vote for the woman candidate, and almost a shaming of men. You're going to see that a lot into today's top 10. You're going to see a lot of shaming of men for not voting for the woman candidate. And it is clips like this from The View that are, let's see, go ahead and load this up. It's clips like this from The View, right, that are going to show you exactly why this podcast exists and what exactly we kind of do on this show. So let me go ahead and get that loaded up. Give me 1 second.
Days left to vote. 4 days. 4 days. A new ad from political nonprofit Vote Common Good is letting women know that it's okay to vote in your own self-interest instead of following the lead of your husbands, conservative husbands, I guess, who are voting for Trump. Watch.
Your turn, honey.
In the one place in America where women still have a right to choose, you can vote any way you want. And no one will ever know.
Did you make the right choice?
Sure did, honey.
Remember, what happens in the booth stays in the booth.
All right, so now, as we discussed in our very first episode, so you got to get a chance, you got to go back and watch our very first episode. We discussed propaganda and the many avenues that propaganda takes to push its media or its message to the masses, right? And politics is just one avenue. So today we're going to be examining the 2024 presidential election and why this matters to young men. So we're going to be going over the reasons that I believe that Donald Trump will win the presidential election, and most of these reasons are not only unprecedented, but historical as well. So I'll be going through each of these reasons from least important to the most important. So bear with me, I got that loaded up. Give me 1 second. Oh my goodness. Give me 1 second. All right, so we got reason number 10. So, excuse me. The military COVID mandate by President Biden. So, most Republicans, they like to focus on Biden's disastrous pullout in Afghanistan, but in my opinion, the military COVID mandate for the service members is going to be a big negative impact on not just Joe Biden, but Kamala Harris as well, because she was a part of his presidency. Now, this is why this is number 10. I don't think it's as big a reason as some of the other reasons that I have lined up, but I think that it will play a bigger role than some like to admit. Now, I'm going to load up a clip on this, and you're going to actually listen to the reversal of this COVID mandate, right? This is kind of an acknowledgement of, the Biden administration that this was not a good policy. So let me go ahead and get that loaded up, and then we'll talk about that on the other side as well.
Status of the 8,400 U.S. military personnel who got kicked out for refusing to get the COVID vaccine remains very much in limbo tonight. Congress, the President, and the Secretary of Defense recently rescinded the vaccine mandate for military members. But there's no decision yet about returning those troops to duty. Today, the Defense Department spokesman said they will not be getting back pay.
In terms of back pay, you're talking specifically on COVID vaccination? Yeah. What I would tell you is right now, we are not currently pursuing back pay to service members who were dismissed for refusing to take the COVID vaccination.
More than 3,500 of those former military members have sued the DoD on grounds of religious discrimination.
So, as I just showed you, they are actually talking about the reversal of the COVID mandate, but there's no back pay for some of those. Well, I'm assuming probably most of the people that refused the vaccine and that opted out. So I think that's going to have a negative push, a negative impact on the policies of both Biden and Kamala Harris, because she co-signed, as she stated, there is no difference between her and Biden's policies. She stated that a few times. She hasn't changed her mind on that. Now, this is why, in my opinion, you see the re-comment, not the re-comment. This is where you see the restating of the suckers and losers comment that President Trump's allegedly made, because they're trying to push on that military, because they know that not just the disastrous Afghanistan pullout by Joe Biden and some of the other military blunders that he's had during his presidency, in which Kamala Harris as well has co-signed, but also it's the COVID mandate, the whole ordeal about that. Now, this is where you also see the Arlington Cemetery supposedly confrontation between President Trump President Trump's handlers, or whatever you want to call them, the people that are with him, and I think the cemetery worker, one of the cemetery workers. So, in my opinion, this is just another narrative to push so that they can try and stop the bleeding. See, this is going to be a death of a thousand cuts, essentially. And that's essentially what we're going to be recovering today, is the death of 1,000 cuts by this campaign. So we're going to go ahead and move on. So let's see. You gotta forgive me. I'm getting used to this. You won't believe how hot this mask is, though. But again, make sure you hit that like button on the video. No other show on YouTube is covering the media the way that we're covering it. So again, hit that like button, give us a follow, hit the subscribe button as well. I'm going to go ahead and go on to our next one. so we have reason number 9. So reason number 9, this is going to be the questionable policy proposals by Kamala Harris, or the inconsistency of any kind of policy proposals, any kind of real policy proposals. So I think, to go over a few, she wants to give $25,000 to first-time homeowners. She wants to sign a law on price gouging, in which that's going to be hard with the current makeup of the Senate, and it's more than likely that the Republicans may take the Senate, because Americans typically like divided government. I think the Democrats are poised to probably win the House. I mean, they only need 4 seats, and I think in New York there's 4 vulnerable Republican seats that they're looking to get in just that state. So that's also, like, that's not really much of a policy proposal. She copied President Trump's no tax on tips, and the border bill. That's right. She wants to support a bipartisan deal on the border, while also offering a pathway to citizenship, which seems counterintuitive, but let's go ahead and listen to what she has to say on this. Let's go ahead. I can get that loaded up.
Days ahead of the Democratic National Convention, Harris laid out economic policies that go further than the DNC's official platform. Harris called for expanding some tax credits for families.
We will provide $6,000 in tax relief to families during the first year of a child's life.
And she called for increasing the DNC platform's proposed $10,000 tax credit for first-time homebuyers.
My administration will provide first-time home buyers with $25,000 to help with the down payment on a new home.
On grocery prices, Harris went further than the DNC platform in calling for a federal ban on price gouging.
I will work to pass the first ever federal ban on price gauging on food.
And after former President Donald Trump called for eliminating taxes on tips, Harris did the same, even though the proposal is not included in the DNC platform.
Eliminate taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers.
Harris has distanced herself from her previous immigration positions when she ran for president in 2019.
I would not make it a crime punishable by jail. It should be a civil enforcement issue, but not a criminal enforcement issue.
She's called for passing a bipartisan Senate border security bill that Trump tanked by telling Republicans to vote against it.
As president, I will bring back the border security bill that Donald Trump killed, and I will sign it into law.
Harris has also called for an earned pathway to citizenship, which is not included in that Senate bill, but is included in the DNC platform.
Comprehensive reform that includes, yes, strong border security and an earned pathway to citizenship.
All right, again, so you see the inconsistency of Kamala Harris's policy plans. As I stated, if you put $25,000 into first-time homeowners, that's going to be included in the cost of building houses, of course. So that policy prescription is pretty much a wash. And then she has a law on price gouging, which would take bipartisanship in the Senate and the House, which right now we are probably one of the most divided times since and she doesn't have a real plan on the border. She wants to provide pathway to citizenship. However, she wants to close the border. I don't know if they work in the same way that she wants them to, but let's go ahead and move on to our next reason. So the first two reasons, we got the military COVID vaccine mandate by the Biden administration, in which the Harris campaign has to also take on, because Kamala Harris herself has said that there's not much of a difference between her and Joe Biden. And then reason number 9, and why I believe Trump will win, is that Kamala Harris has no real plans for policy, no real policy proposals other than "I'm not him, Donald Trump bad." So let's go ahead and move on to our next reason. So I think we are on number 8. All right, so number 8. We've got a few videos here on number 8. So we have the similarities between the protests of the DNC of 1968 and 2024. So we've got a couple videos we want to play on that. But we're kind of continuing from the undecided voter group from the Democratic primaries, during which Joe Biden ran, in which I think, what was it, like 100,000 or so in Michigan, or I think it was Michigan, chose either third party, or they didn't put any name on the ballot, I believe. I can't remember, I have to look that up, but the DNC had massive protests, and this is over the Israel and the Gaza war. And that protest resulted in, I believe, about 100,000 voters in Michigan leaving the candidate name blank, I believe. So the DNC this year, I think earlier this year, when Kamala Harris came the presumptive nominee, it had protests as well, which had some similarities to the 1968 DNC, in which we'll actually be talking about a little bit over the next few reasons. We'll actually be talking about that quite a bit during the stream, in which it, I believe, plays a crucial look or understanding of where this campaign of Kamala Harris is at now. So let's go ahead and load up the first video for that.
Yeah, well, I think, as you noted, there are a number of similarities between this moment, but I think the differences are equally as important. The protests in 1868 were over the Vietnam War, and that conflict had obviously been going on for quite some time. The protests were enormous in scale and really encompassed huge sections of the American public. And Humphrey really had trouble distancing himself from the administration because it had been such a central part of the administration's policy. I think Harris has been quite notable in that she has intentionally changed her tone. She has met with some of the protesters ahead of time, and she has also occasionally taken a firm line when they have interrupted her in the past. And I think a couple of these key intentional choices, while not necessarily changing policy, have shifted her emphasis, and suggests to me that she's very much learned from the 1968 example.
And to that.
All right, so let's discuss some of the similarities rather than focus on the differences, as this lady discussed. I think she went over a few of the differences, but some of the similarities of the 1968 Democratic election, or the DNC, and the 2024. In both years, 1968 and 2024, they were both held in Chicago, Illinois. The protests both times were about wars that were being currently fought under the current administration. And both VP Harris and VP Humphrey support the war. Well, we don't know what Harris actually supports because, again, going back to number 9, no real policy plans or real, stands on anything. We don't know where she stands. But we'd have to assume, if she, in her own words, there's not much difference between her and Joe Biden, she also, like Biden, supports the war. Excuse me. So again, both Humphrey and Harris both support the war. So that's also a similarity. Excuse me. The only, I think one of the bigger differences, in my opinion, is that the Republican nominee that both Democrats were running against were only slightly different. You had Richard Nixon, who was the former vice president, and then you had Donald Trump, who is the former president. So that's one of the differences that I think is a big difference, is that, well, Richard Nixon used to be vice president, and he won. Donald Trump used to be president. And I wish I had time to go over these, but also there's all these other metrics, of course, the favorability rating of the administration. When the favorability rating is what it is, who actually wins the White House, and the Biden administration is far below. I think when George Bush lost the White House, George H.W. Bush, I believe, and then also when President Clinton was president and Al Bush ran for election, what was his favorability, or what was the favorability rating of President Clinton, and did Al Gore actually win? He won, of course, a popular vote, but he didn't win the electoral vote. And Kamala Harris is far below that. So I got one more video I want to load up. Let's see. And then we're going to move on to our next reason.
The city of Chicago is stepping up security as tens of thousands of demonstrators are expected to descend on the Democratic National Convention. The vast majority are protesting against the conflict between Israel and Hamas. The prospect of those protests is evoking memories of the 1968 DNC, which was also held in Chicago. That year, anti-Vietnam War protesters clashed with police. Images like these aired on television, and protesters chanted, "The whole world is watching."
All right, so as you can see on there, the protests are a little bit more violent, or they're a little less restrained. During 1968, the Democrats obviously learned from that situation and they prepared themselves. Excuse me. Now, we have reason 7, which we're about to go over. And this is going to be a big, go ahead and load this up. This is going to be a big part of the stream and why exactly this pertains to our podcast. But, excuse me, this is going to be a lot of emphasis on, or there's going to be a lot of emphasis on this next reason and what they may believe will be the cause of this election, which is men versus women. So let's go ahead and get into that reason. All right, so we have number 7. We are going to be talking about the gender voting gap. You're going to hear a lot of this in some of the clips that we may play today about the gender voting gap between men and women, black men and black women, young men versus young women, older men and older women. So you'll hear a lot about that today. So it's being reported numerous times in recent polling numbers that there is seemingly a gender gap when it comes to voting this election. So we'll go ahead and load up the first video for this. Now this is, as I explained in my intro, this is mostly partly due to the policy platforms of both parties. So the Democrats, of course, favor policies that women find more favorable, or more important, we'll say. And get this loaded. And the Republican supports policies that most men find most favorable to them. So let's go ahead and get the first one loaded.
Great time.
And we pressed her about the widening gender gap. The latest NBC News poll shows Harris leads Trump among women by 14 points. But Trump has a 16-point advantage with men. Just today, the Harris campaign expanding its advertising on websites that draw largely male audiences, like the sports betting site DraftKings. The vice president downplaying the divide.
Why do you think there is a disconnect for you with men right now?
Well, let me tell you can look at this audience and you can see that there are people of every background and gender who are showing up by the thousands. And I think it is because they know I intend to be a president for all Americans. And that is how I'm campaigning to earn the vote of every American, not only about their gender, but about their geographic location, and unburdened by who they may have voted for in the past.
Just to be clear, though, men still say by a 16% margin they're supporting Donald Trump right now. Why do you think that is?
It's not the experience that I'm having, to be honest with you.
All right, as you can see there, Kamala Harris obviously doesn't want to answer the obvious question, which is, why are you having an issue with men? Now, you'll see a lot of you'll see a lot of the media concentrating on the fact that Donald Trump is struggling with women, but that's really no surprise because Donald Trump has always had a little trouble with women, less so in the 2016 election, but that's already kind of baked into the pie. What they don't want to address is why Kamala Harris is having trouble with men, and we're going to actually go into one of the top reasons later in the show. Make sure you click that like button. Again, we're doing an election show breakdown here, but again, no other show on YouTube is covering what we do on the FM podcast, so make sure you give this video a like, hit that subscribe button, give us a follow if you like this type of content. Check us out. We're on all the social media platforms. So again, Kamala Harris is having trouble with men, and the media doesn't want to, or they don't really like to report on that. And let's see, we got one more video I want to play in which actually explains more deeply why men and women are going to be a lot of polar opposites when it comes to this election, or a lot of the polar opposite ends. That's why, essentially this election is men versus women, but I would say less so of that and more of traditional masculinity versus this new feminine matriarch. So let's go ahead and load up this next video.
ask young voters what issue is most important to you when you go to cast a vote. Among young men, it's the economy. Among young women, it's abortion.
17% of men say the economy is the most important issue, followed by democracy and immigration. Whereas for young women, the top issue is abortion, by a lot.
Why is this happening? Well, we put the reasons into two different buckets. One is the life experiences that young men and young women are having. Those life experiences are diverging.
Young men without a college degree have seen the greatest decline in labor force participation. Meanwhile, a record 87% of college-educated women are in the workforce. And today, women make up 60% of college graduates.
This division that we're seeing between young men and young women, it goes beyond who they're going to vote for Congress or president. It goes to a range of policy issues. So then let's look at what the government is offering. The Biden administration has moved to forgive federally funded student loans. That affects young women more than young men.
During the 2019-2020 school year, 49% of female undergraduate students took out loans, compared to only 42% of male undergraduates. And 66% of all student debt is carried by women.
The young women favored forgiving student loans by 45 percentage points. The young men were about equally divided. I mean, that's a big difference.
Meanwhile, young men support extending Trump's tax cuts by 23 percentage points, which cut the corporate tax rate and reduced some individual income tax.
And now, because of our tax cuts, you can keep more of your hard-earned money.
But women oppose the proposed extension by 20 percentage points, a full 43-point difference.
That's data that goes like this. Young men headed in one direction and young women in the other. That's a big difference. Data does not usually segment young voters that remarkably.
All right, so I know there are some that are like, okay, if this show is a lot about men and women and the gender divide is so prominent during this election, why is it so low on my list? And that is because I believe that it is significant. There are more reasons that I believe that Donald Trump will win, but these are my top 10. I wanted to keep the list pretty short. Now, the reason why this one is number 7 and not higher on the list, is because I believe that there are more pertinent things that people care about or that are going to substantially change the outcome of this election versus men and women. Because the media likes to concentrate on this, again, that's that media propaganda bias, that push to say that, hey, it's men versus women, so you want to side with the woman. But again, I don't think it's that prominent, so this is why that is so low on my list. But let's go ahead and move on to the next reason. All right, so we're getting close to the top 5, and you'll start to understand why some of these are higher up. This is one that I would have actually liked to put higher up in the list, but I thought that other ones were more historical or significant than this. And the reason why this one's so ironic to me is that the left loves to drone and drone on about Donald Trump and his lies. I think they have his lies in the thousands or whatnot, which is so hilarious because, just to be a politician, you got to lie. So it's hilarious to me. But the false job report numbers, this is number 6. Now, we know that the Biden administration has lied numerous times during their administration. They lied about inflation. They lied about being in a recession. We know that a recession is 2 negative quarters. We were 2 quarters in the negative. which would technically put us in a recession. However, they lied to the public saying that we weren't in a recession. Americans typically don't like this. They don't like when they feel like the wool has been pulled over their eyes, and as we get further down the list, you're going to see even more egregious acts in which they believe that the wool has been covered or pulled over their eyes. Kamala Harris is just one aspect of that. Her inability to stand on a policy or to stand on anything is the American people going to feel like, well, you're trying to pull the wool over our eyes. I don't think this election is close by one bit. I think there is going to be a big electoral college win for Donald Trump. Now, I may at the end of the show, or at the end of this live stream, I may actually tell you the 6 or I think it's 7 states that I believe that are swing states that I believe Donald Trump will win versus Kamala Harris. So let's go ahead and pull up the video for the false job numbers report. So we're going to see some false job numbers report, and this wasn't, which surprised me, this wasn't, of course, you know, you got Fox News and certain places that will play it, but I was surprised that a lot of emphasis wasn't put on the false job numbers report. But let's go ahead and, of course, the first one's going to be Fox News. So let's go ahead and load this one up.
30 minutes ago, Edward Lawrence live in the Grand Tetons, Jackson, Wyoming, now has the revision number on the job claim of the past 12 months. And what is it, Edward?
This is a huge revision down, 818,000 fewer jobs. This is basically the government's overstated the amount of people in the workforce. And even when you look under this, manufacturing was down 115,000 people. So this is a revision down, a significant revision down, the largest in 15 years that we've seen. And it basically says that the government has now overstated the amount of people who are working in this workforce. It shows weakness in the job markets over the past year that we didn't realize was there, but now we know is there. So again, 818,000 overall jobs down, manufacturing down 115,000 in this. And if you just wrote construction down 45,000. So these numbers are huge numbers in revisions down. Bill?
We need perspective. You do the math, it's 68,000 per month. How significant is that?
Right. Yeah, 68,000 per month could swing. You know, what was the last jobs report? 115,000, if my memory serves me. But it could. This is a huge swing. It's a huge chunk of jobs that would no longer be in the workforce related to this. The perspective is that this economy is much weaker than they thought. The markets will look at this and they'll be able to say, hey, the consumer isn't quite as strong as we thought they were because not as many people have jobs. That means not as many people are spending money. And those consumers, it's 70% of the economy moving forward, 70% of the economy growth is related to consumer spending. Okay. And when you take some of that away, a lot of that away, that means you have fewer people spending. And it's a more realistic look right now at how the economy is performing. And more realistically, it's not performing as well on the job side as we first thought.
Okay, markets seem to be a bit neutral.
All right, so as you heard, that's a lot. That's a big jump, and they were expecting maybe a larger number, which is crazy to me. That's so shocking. Now, in my opinion, the American people, they remember these things. They do not forget such big numbers like that. A big lie. That's a big lie, but you didn't see the media cover that as one of Joe Biden's lies, in which Joe Biden lies a lot as well. He's got a he's got a big political career in which we can actually investigate all the lies. All the lies that Joe Biden needs is crazy. That he's actually told over the years, that they've actually called, even the mainstream media had to to report on. Now, in my opinion, the American people, large majority, they do not trust this administration, which is why I believe they will give the keys to the White House to Donald Trump. And I believe that they will give the House to the Democrats, and the Senate, I believe, will also go to the Republicans. So it will force bipartisanship. So let's go ahead and get this next video loaded up as well. So this is also on the false job numbers report. Let's see. All right.
Welcome back in. A massive revision from the Labor Department shows the U.S. economy created fewer jobs than first reported over a 12-month period.
That correction is in the hundreds of thousands. It's a big oops. It's fueling concerns the labor market is not as strong as previously thought. Laura Aguirre has details.
It's an abrupt about face for the U.S. labor market. Newly revised numbers released by the Labor Department Wednesday morning were stunning, showing 818,000 fewer jobs created over the 12 months leading up to March 2024 than previously reported. Data revisions are common, but not to this degree, and Wednesday's correction is the Labor Department's largest downward adjustment since 2009. Now, behind the eye-popping headline, many economists had indicated they were expecting a sizable revision, possibly up to 1 million jobs less.
Oh, my bad. That one actually is the one where they were expecting 1 million jobs or less, so I spoke too soon on that, but excuse me. But again, these are things that I don't think the American people will by and large forget, and I don't think the Biden administration or the Harris administration has actually taken this into account. So we're going to our next reason. So let's go ahead and get that loaded up. All right, so we have reason number 5. We're getting into the back end, top 5. So the economy versus abortion. So economy versus abortion. I think that's again a male versus female. So you'll still see that gender divide on topics, even as we possibly get further up the list. But economy versus abortion, that's typically men versus women. Men hold the economy, as we've seen in the, I think, number 7, the gender voting gap. We see that men care more about the economy by and large more than women, versus women, I think, is for abortion. So there's going to be this big emphasis on economy versus abortion this election cycle as well. And that's what the left is banking on, that the abortion issue will win them the keys to the White House. I just don't think that is the case. I think that there's too much going on with the economy, and I think the American people don't like it. So I think we even see that in the polls. I think most of the polls, the economy and immigration are the top of mind of voters, and I think it's abortion number 3. So it's typically, yeah, that's right. It's typically the economy, immigration, and then abortion. So, and we're discovering after Hurricane Helene, immigration, or at least illegal immigration, has a major impact on the economy. That money that could have went to American families in the Western Carolinas, especially Western North Carolina, could have used that money that they supposedly also ran out of during FEMA, because I believe the Biden administration used that money for illegal immigration, but I could be wrong on that. let's go ahead and load up the video that we have for this. Let's go ahead and here we go.
And Amy, will start with the Cook Political Report out with a new look at the 2024 race and the issues that matter most to likely swing state voters. In a new survey that is out today, Donald Trump has a lead within the margin of error in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. And he and President Joe Biden are tied in Wisconsin. Swing state voters say the economy is the issue that matters most to them, with their own cost of living being the best way to measure it. They also say they are more worried about Biden setting economic policy than about Trump setting abortion policy. And Biden's age is also seen as more of a concern than Trump's temperament and legal issues. Amy, break this down for us, if you could.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. And we looked at voters in all of those important battleground states because we know that those are the states that are ultimately going to decide the next president. And, you know, sometimes politics is complicated and sometimes it's not. In this case, it's not all that complicated. Voters really are frustrated and really disillusioned about the cost of things. It is driving how they think about politics right now. It's the lens through which they are viewing this election. And that helps Donald Trump a lot.
So, as you can see from that clip, that even, of course it's a different campaign with Harris, but I don't think especially since Kamala Harris herself stated that there's not much room or difference between her and Joe Biden when it comes to policy. That most voters trust Trump with the economy over Democrats with abortion. And even if Kamala Harris were to be elected president, she does not have the votes to nationalize abortion. I think they can get rid of the filibuster, but the Democrats should actually, what's that old saying? Those who fail to remember history are doomed to repeat it. The Democrats nuked the nuclear option, I think with Harry Reid back in 2013 to get Obamacare passed through. Was it 2013? Can't remember which year. But either way, the Democrats are the one that wrote the rule that essentially you had to have 2/3 of the senators, which were essentially 66 and a half, since you need the Trump weight. That's 67 senators that you need. Now you only need 60, I believe, right? Well, the Democrats nuked that so they could pass through Obamacare, and the Republicans then used that to hold up Merrick Garland's seat, or supposed seat of Justice. No, not Alito. I can't remember the justice that died, but they essentially stopped Merrick Garland from getting that seat until after the 2016 presidential election, in which they were then able to nominate Judge Gorsuch, and then Judge Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett, because they had power in the Senate. So if the Democrats remember their history, they would know that it's probably not a good idea to nuke the filibuster so you could ram through abortion, because when the Republicans are in power, what do you think they're going to do? All right, so let's go ahead, and I have another video here that we're going to check out.
Is it positive? Is it negative? Now, these are not great numbers for either one. Trump 43 positive, 51 negative. He's 8 points underwater, you might say. But look at Harris. Exact same positive score, and that negative number almost in the exact same place. And this is it. The last time we polled this question after that debate, Harris had really made up ground in this area. Look, she had a positive rating, 48 to 45. So that advantage has all in the last few weeks in our poll washed away for her. Then there's some issues, some characteristics here. These are advantages in red here that you see for Trump now versus September. On the immigration and the border, we ask voters, who would be better on this? In September, Trump had a big advantage. It's gotten bigger. On inflation and the cost of living, Trump's advantage now hits double digits. And on the question of who represents change, Harris had the advantage in September. She still does, but lower.
So significant because voters are telling us change is a critical issue for them, not the direction you want to be going in there, Steve.
No, absolutely not. And maybe a reason for that, too, is remember, she's the VP in an unpopular administration. Look, we asked Joe Biden's policies as president. Do you think they're helping or hurting your family? Look at that. Almost 2-to-1 say hurting more than helping. His job approval rating is in the low 40s. And then here's the twist. When you ask folks, when Trump was president, were his policies helping or hurting? Look at that difference. 44% say helping, 31% say they hurt. So retrospectively,
wow.
Trump is getting some numbers here. Maybe he didn't even get when he was president. And then this.
All right, so again, you see basically what I just stated, that Americans are not, by and large, happy with the policies of the current administration, in which Kamala Harris has not differentiated herself from Joe Biden's economic policies or pretty much any of his policy prescriptions. So therefore, that, in my opinion, is also transferring to her campaign, which is why she's not doing so well despite all the coordinated attacks with the help of the media on Trump. Now, we have only about 4 left, so we are approaching the downhill trajectory. So, we're about to approach that top 3. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well. Follow us for more of this type of content. And of course, this is our special election 2024 coverage. But again, go back to the beginning, you'll see exactly why this is pertinent to the type of message that we push on this podcast. And we're going to get into number 4. And this is again going back to the lying that the Democratic Party does and how the American people are just not necessarily going to be ready to hand over the keys to the White House to a party that's willing to lie to them and lie to their face about the lying. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so number 4, reason number 4 will be Biden. I said Biden. Biden, President Biden being pushed out. So I don't think that it's been long enough to live with the ramifications of the whiplash of jumping from Biden to Harris yet, and we probably won't know until after the election, much later. But I think that this is a big blunder, and it's not one that the Democrats could have avoided because, again, this goes back to their lying to the American people about the competency and the ability of Joe Biden as the president. And it just came to a head during that presidential debate between him and Donald Trump. Excuse me. But the last time an incumbent president chose not to run for re-election was LBJ. And part of the reason he chose not to run for re-election was because of the Vietnam War. Now, this is slightly different from Biden because, of course, Biden is cognitive, and we saw it on the TV. So LBJ's vice president, who went on to run for president as the Democratic nominee, well, he lost, and his loss was attributed to holding the same views as the war of his former boss. Sound familiar? Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. So it is more evident, though, that Biden was pushed out and is clearly not over that. If we look at some of the recent incidents that Biden has had, such as refusing to, I guess, say that Ron DeSantis wasn't very cooperative during the latest hurricane. He actually backed Ron DeSantis versus when Kamala Harris attacked Ron DeSantis for not, I think, accepting her phone call. He wore the MAGA hat. He held a press conference around the same time as, or I think, as she was going out for a rally, so then the news covered his press conference. So again, I just think he's not over that, and one of the videos that we're going to be looking at today is going to show you exactly why I don't think he's over that. So let's go ahead and get that one loaded up.
Joe Biden is hunkering down inside his vacation home in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. He's in self-isolation with First Lady Dr. Jill.
Physically, I'm told the president is just wiped and exhausted from the COVID diagnosis.
The timing couldn't be worse.
The next 72 hours for Joe Biden could reshape the 2024 election race as we know it.
Sources tell NBC News that the Biden family are now discussing a carefully calculated plan to exit the race.
A bullet couldn't stop Trump. A virus just stopped Biden.
In the first national poll since the assassination attempt, Trump leads Biden by 5 points. Newsmax reporter Mark Halperin says Biden's exit is imminent.
According to my sources, President Biden has agreed to step down as the Democratic nominee.
Oh, man.
It will happen as early as this weekend. A speech has been drafted for him.
But today, President Biden issued this statement, shutting down the reports he's quitting the race. I look forward to getting back on the campaign trail next week to continue to expose the threat of Donald Trump. The stakes are high and the choice is clear. The Biden-Harris campaign manager spoke out on CBS Mornings.
Joe Biden has been very clear. He is running for president of the United States, and our campaign is continuing to implement a strategy to win with him at the top of the ticket.
All right, so as you can see, Biden to the very end was defiant. He did not want to just drop out of the race. So there's this kind of revisionist history about Biden gracefully dropping out to make way for Kamala Harris, as if, again, lying to the public, as if we didn't see what we saw with our own eyes, Biden being pushed out. And we know this by our next clip that we're going to be playing as well, in which Biden actually supposedly calls out the person that pushed him out. Let's go ahead and get into that clip.
I was concerned if I stayed in the race, that would be the topic. You'd be interviewing me about why did Nancy Pelosi say, why did so, and I thought it'd be a real distraction. With the COVID, with dealing with everything we had to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
It's up to the president to decide if he is going to run. We're all encouraging him to make that decision.
But it is so well reported that you were the leader of a pressure campaign.
No, I wasn't a leader of any pressure party. Well, let me say things that I didn't do. I didn't call one person.
All right, as we can see there, Pelosi essentially was pulling the string behind, or she was pulling the string behind the scenes, right? She essentially got Biden to drop out of the race. She saw the writing on the wall. She saw that Trump would not only trounce Joe Biden, but down ticket would destroy, and they wanted to take the chance on Kamala Harris. So they pulled some strings behind the scenes. But again, this is, I think, going to have ramifications. That's why it's higher on the list. I think that people didn't like that Biden was pushed out, maybe some of the Democrats. And this will actually go into our next reasoning, top three we're going into, why that the American people are going to have a backlash against giving the keys to the White House to a party that will do that to its own members. So let's go ahead and get started with top 3. Make sure you hit that like button. All right, so number 3. So number 3 is no democratic process for which Kamala Harris was nominated. Right? I actually have a few videos for this. This is the reason why this tops off our number 3, because this is like the pinnacle of the lying that the Democratic Party will do, and the subversion that they'll do even to their own, not only party members like Joe Biden, but their own party voters. So I got a few videos on this because I think there's a reason why this is number 3, it's in our top 3, is because for a party that talks about democracy, they didn't have much of a democracy in their own election. And one of the last videos I have on this is going to explain exactly why that democratic process is good and the negative result of the Democrats not having that process in their own party. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and get started on the very first of those videos without wasting any time. Here we go.
As we discussed a moment ago, President Biden continues to insist he will stay in the presidential race through Election Day, despite calls from some Democrats for him to step aside after a poor showing at the debate 10 days ago. If the president did yield to another candidate, and that remains a big if this morning, what would come next? Is it as simple as passing the baton to Vice President Kamala Harris, or would others join the fight for the nomination? NBC News congressional correspondent Julie Sirkin has our Sunday focus.
I shall not seek, and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
March 1968. President Lyndon B. Johnson, consumed by the war in Vietnam, stunned the nation by announcing he would not run for re-election.
This is a hard and a difficult campaign.
2 months later, Robert F. Kennedy, locked in a tight race for the nomination, was shot and killed. At the Democratic convention that year in Chicago, chaos, both outside and inside the amphitheater. After a floor fight, the Democrats nominated Vice President Hubert Humphrey.
I am ready to lead our country.
But it was too late. Richard Nixon went on to defeat Humphrey in November.
All right, so again, I told you that you'll see a lot about the 1968 election for president, especially from the Democrat Party side. So again, you see a lot of that parallel from 1968 to 2024 and the turmoil that it caused back then. I think that turmoil will also apply now. It's just less, how do I say, it's less obvious or whatnot. You know, you still had the protests in Chicago. You still had people not voting. There were protests outside of the DNC, the 2024. So again, I think the American people, they don't like the fact that this party so easily just subverted their own democratic process while also screaming to the other guy or screaming about the other guy not upholding democracy. So I got another video I want to play on that. So let's go ahead and get into that video as well. And then we got one more video. This actually is like, I debated on making this number 1 or 2 or higher up on the list, but I think the other two play a more significant role, and you'll see why. But this is one of those ones that is not only unprecedented, or I'm sorry, not unprecedented, but it's happened before, but it's almost historical as it doesn't happen that often. Just like, Kamala Harris getting the nomination or being the Democratic nominee without any actual votes. So let's go ahead and get into the next clip.
It was only 12 days ago that President Biden made the announcement that he would not continue running for a second term and endorsed Harris. She now becomes the only candidate in half a century to become the nominee without a single primary vote.
So, as you can see there, I think it's 50 years, I think that's what they said. She didn't receive a single vote, single primary vote. That is historical at the very least. And it makes sense why she's struggling. Even if you had ample time, right? Let's say they had, I think can't remember when their primaries were, must have been at the beginning of the year, but let's say shortly after their primaries, they would have done the same thing, and she would have gotten in the race. I think that she would still be having similar problems, which is that she didn't get any votes. Like, there was no actual process in which she was elected. And I think this next clip that I have coming up is going to explain exactly why that is so important. Give me a second, loading it up. And that's going to explain why it's so important. I think, again, like my intro, Kellyanne Conway is going to explain in such an eloquent way that I'm only going to be able to add a few more things to it. But let her explain to you exactly why no democratic process for which Kamala Harris was nominated is actually a negative for her campaign.
I think your question is excellent. I'll give you a very short answer. It was an anti-democratic move by the I think your question is excellent. I'll give you a very short answer. It was an anti-democratic move by the Democrat Party. It's plain and simple. They should just say that. And my earlier point about the value of having competitive primaries, I think, is coming back to hurt Vice President Harris, because she clearly hasn't had to go out there and earn those votes and get slapped around a little bit on primaries and caucuses and debate stages by your competitors, and then you say, whoa, I really need to sharpen up here. I'm about to lose to Bernie Sanders. I'm not a big fan of saying, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? We're in a global pandemic, we had social unrest. But if people want to look at 2019 Trump versus 2019 Harris, that's when she ran for president on her own. And that gives you the best vision of actually who she is. She didn't come up with a single Democratic delegate, not one. And I think that this has cost the party on the whole question of who's better at protecting democracy, Kamala Harris or Donald Trump.
All right, so like I said, she explained it so well, because as Kellyanne Conway just stated, because Kamala Harris never went through any primaries, she hasn't been used to being knocked around and bruised around on the stage, having her ideas challenged and reformed, and being more malleable to attract the most voters. She didn't have that, so that's why you get the stance that she has on a lot of things, which she gives you non-answers, or as they like to call it in the media, word salad answers. And she doesn't really have any, as the old saying goes, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And I think that is why her lack of a democratic process or primary process, right? The lack of doing that makes her susceptible to have just wild stances, or not really, how do I say it, substantiate really any stance that she has on anything. So we're down to our last two. So I want to thank y'all for sticking with me during this live stream. This is only my second time doing a live stream, so I want to appreciate sticking with me at the FM podcast. Again, I'm your host, the Blackman, the world's darkest detective, right? The dark knight. Again, if you like this type of content, if you want to see more of this type of content, make sure you hit that like button on the video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Give us a follow. Every follow is substantial to our channel because we're just starting out. So we appreciate all of your views. We appreciate all of the time that you spend watching our stuff. It takes a lot to make some of these videos. So again, I'm very appreciative, straight from the heart. So let's go ahead and get started on our final two reasons. All right, so like most of Trump's his presidential political legacy, however you want to define it, political legacy, presidential run, right? He makes history with most things that he does. He's the only president to be impeached twice, the first and only Republican presidential nominee to run against and, in my opinion, successfully beat two Democratic female presidential nominees. I mean, who else can say that but President Trump? And he's had I think, the most assassination attempts. I might be wrong on the most, but at least in modern history, for sure. I think the last time we had a presidential assassination was Ronald Reagan in '81 or so. But yeah, man, he just makes history with most of the things he does. Trump is a history-making president, and even his assassination attempts. The guy has been tried to be assassinated. I think last count was like 3 times. So we're actually going to look at a few videos on this. And in my opinion, this is one of the things that is going to help get him elected, right? Ronald Reagan was assassinated early in the beginning of his presidency, and he overwhelmingly won re-election the second time around. I think only one state, and guess what state that happened to be? I think that's where Tim Walz may be from, can't remember. But anyway, I digress. So I think this is going to play a big role in which that's why they, kind of cover, right, the assassination attempts. They kind of downplay it. But I think that's going to be a big thing, especially the first assassination attempt that was literally inches away from his brain. So let me go ahead and get one of these set up. All right. So we've got a couple videos in which I'm going to play, and we're going to be discussing on the other end these attempts on President Trump's life. So again, this is reason number 2, Trump will be president.
Now to the assassination attempt on former President Trump at one of his golf courses in Florida. Trump spoke about it overnight after the suspect appeared in court for the first time. Rachel Scott is in West Palm Beach with the latest on the investigation. Good morning, Rachel.
George, we are learning new details this morning. Officials say this is where the suspect was camped out for nearly 12 hours in those bushes. Just over those hedges is the golf course. A Secret Service agent just one hole ahead, spotting the barrel of a rifle sticking out.
Keep walking!
Overnight, new body camera video showing the moment officers arrested the 58-year-old man they say camped out on Donald Trump's golf course for 12 hours, allegedly trying to assassinate him.
What's your name, Austin? Ryan?
All right, so that is the second Trump assassination attempt. I think this was down by his golf course. I can't remember. Yeah, it was by his golf course. And that was just the second attempt, that was easily thwarted. Now, I'm going to be playing another clip that's going to showcase the first attempt. I couldn't really find much on the third, supposedly, attempt. I think it was less of an attempt and more of maybe a threat. But again, I think this is going to play a big role. This is why these were above the, let's say, I want to say, like, the gender divide when it comes to voting. I think, obviously, number one is, in my opinion, going to be bigger than what the polls can even capture. But the assassination attempt, Biden being pushed out, and the no democratic process in which Kamala Harris was nominated, I think these will be bigger, or less significant. I'm sorry, not less significant, or more significant issues than the gender voting gap for this election. I think that's what the media would like, because they believe that off their polling that the gender voting gap, since women are a little bit more, there's a little bit more women than men, and that women vote primarily more than men, that if it was just off the gender voting gap, that the Democrat would overwhelmingly win. But I don't think that's the case. So I got another video I got lined up, and let's see. I want to also look at that one, and that is going to be on the assassination of Trump. So let's go ahead and check that one out as well before we move into our number one reason why Trump will win the 2024 election.
My guys, take a look at that chart. It is exactly what these counter snipers trained to do. But this was the first time in history, according to a former senior agent, that a Secret Service sniper killed a would-be assassin. But clearly a shot too late. In the moments leading up to the deadly shooting, you can see those two counter snipers scanning for threats in their positions on the rooftop behind former President Trump. Their high-powered rifles appear to be pointed in the direction of the gunman's position on an adjacent building overlooking the rally. Within seconds, chaos. He's going down!
Stand here. He's on top of the roof. Don't go over there.
The sniper appears momentarily startled by the gunfire, his face leaving the scope, but then quickly recovering and taking out the would-be assassin.
There's no room for error, so that shot placement has to be absolutely precise.
All right, as you can see, the sniper, I think, missed by, I think it was like by not even like an inch, like missed him by less than an inch. And I think that this is going to play a big role in how Americans perceive, even though a lot of the emphasis has been from the Democrats to say that Trump is a threat and that he incites violence. I think that a lot of Americans, especially independents, are going to see this as, well, no, he's not a threat, and if I actually hand y'all the keys to the White House, that's going to be almost like a, how do I say it, an acceptance of the violence against political opponents that we don't like. And I don't think that most Americans feel that way. So I think this is going to backfire on them. So let's go ahead and get into our top reason. Again, make sure you hit the like button on this video. FM Podcast, no other podcast on YouTube is breaking down what we're breaking down here. And we're doing our special election breakdown. And again, if you want to know why this pertains to the type of content that we push, again, watch the beginning of the video. I kind of go over this, have somebody kind of explain this a little bit. So let's go ahead and get into, that's right, our top reason why Donald Trump will win the presidency. So, Trump has historically increased the black vote for any modern Republican candidate for president or any presidential nominee candidate. And this is in part due to the increased share of the black male vote. So, number one reason why Donald Trump will be elected is the black male vote. In my opinion, I think Donald Trump will win about 23% of the black male vote. Almost 1/4 of the black male vote, I believe Donald Trump will win. And this, of course, along with all the other 1,000 cuts that the Democrats have inflicted upon themselves, this is going to be one that hurts them mostly because they depend on these votes. And you're going to see how much they depend on these votes through even, of course, I'm pretty sure you've seen Barack Obama, right? Supposedly criticizing black men. And we're actually going to be looking at a few videos on that. Not only Barack Obama, but you see this big push in, I think BET did this dumbass summit, Black Men Summit, and you see all these podcasts in which they're trying to shame black men for not voting for Donald Trump. For voting for Donald Trump and not voting for Kamala Harris, when in fact about 70% of black men said they're going to vote for Kamala Harris. Now the reason why they're panicking and freaking out is because this is far lower than Barack Obama's, which was 90%. I think Hillary Clinton had like 80-something%, and Joe Biden also had like 80%. So they have steadily been losing the black male vote, and like the young man in the beginning of my intro stated, the Democrats have steadily been losing the black male vote, and this isn't, really inherent to Kamala Harris or any particular candidate. It's just the Democratic Party, and that is because, as he stated, the Democratic Party is a party of matriarchy and post-second wave feminism, and they basically resent men. And I think this is why you see the realignment of these political parties in that way. So let's go ahead and check out the first video of Barack Obama scolding black men because they're not voting at like a 90% clip for Kamala Harris, which is hilarious because, what did Barack Obama really do for black men? But let's go ahead, unless you are a black gay man, I'll say that. Let's go ahead and get started.
You're thinking about
Hold on. See if I can get it lined up.
you're thinking about sitting out or even supporting somebody who has a history of denigrating you because you think that's a sign of strength, because that's what being a man is, putting women down. That's not acceptable.
Now, I didn't want to play the whole clip. I think it's about 5 minutes. You can go check out another clip of, Barack Obama saying those things. But I wanted to play the quick version because he says, it goes, he's a slow talker, and he likes to enunciate every word. So, yeah, I think it's about 5 minutes, a little over 5 minutes. So if you want to go watch him give that beratement of black men, you go right ahead. But, he says a lot in that, and I think this next clip that we're going to actually look at actually explains, the frustration that, black men have had, not only with Barack Obama or Kamala Harris, but with the Democratic Party. And we're going to go ahead and load up that video to top off our number one reason why Donald Trump will win the election. So let's go ahead and get that one started.
And by the way, Governor Walz, according to Politico, is going to be going out on a mentor, literally a tour of media to appeal to men.
They need to appeal to the needs of the voters. And so when I was a delegate for President Obama in both of his elections in Ohio, right now the vice president is down 11 points in Ohio, even though I fully expect President Trump to take Ohio as he did twice, but to be down 11 points compared to President Biden, that is a problem. But this other issue I want to bring up is a problem too. Why are black men being lectured to? Why are black men being belittled in ways that no other voting group? Now, a lot of love for former President Obama, but for him to single out black men is wrong. And some of the black men that I have talked to have their reasons why they want to vote a different way. And even if some of us may not like that, we have to respect it. So unless President Barack Obama is going to go out and lecture every other group of men from other identity groups, my message for Democrats is don't bring it here to black men who, by and large, don't vote much differently from black women. And why, as a politician, we should be trying to get all voters to vote. And hopefully there are a few good men out there who do care about the stripping away of some of women's bodily autonomy. But this is wrong for President Obama. It is a wrong course for the Harris-Walz campaign to lay at the feet of black men when they have their reasons. In 2020, the vice president was labeled a cop, as we know.
But do you think, sorry to interrupt you, Nina, but do you think he's right that one of the reasons is because they don't like the idea of a woman?
It might be some. Listen, black men are socialized in the same society as any other man. So yes, is misogyny maybe a part of it? But again, is President Obama and is the Harris-Walz campaign going to lecture other male groups in the same way that they're lecturing
This is
black
not
men?
just about.
I don't think so.
It's not just about.
I think Nina Simone, which she surprised me. I think she's one of those Democrats that are, she's one of those Democrats that, at least have somewhat semblance of common sense. Her statement on that it hits the nail right on the head. And to be coming from a black woman is so poignant. She makes a very good point when she says that why are black men singled out when they, by and large, like I just stated, vote not much differently than black women than all these other races. But then Abby Phillips tried to say something about misogyny or whatnot, and it's like, yeah, I'm sure that is because black men are socialized in the same place that other races of men are. So I'm sure some of it is misogyny, but to say it's all misogyny is bull crap. And see, that's what you see a lot from this media, which is a man versus woman. And I will agree that, yes, both of the political parties are almost mirror men versus women, right? Democrats for women, Republicans for men. I believe that, yes, the media is correct that it's almost a men versus women, but they try to fuel that animosity between men versus women to get women to show up for the election because more women typically vote than men. But I think this election is going to be vastly different than most any other elections. And the reason this election is so important to young men is because they are essentially deciding their future. If they let Kamala Harris win, or Kamala Harris is able to get into the White House, what that's going to signal to the Democrat Party is that they don't need men and that they can actually build coalitions without a lot of men. And they'll get some men, the soft men, right? The men that can't really substantiate their points without, victimizing themselves or others. But if men allow for this election to be won by Kamala Harris, you're going to see a big realignment of ideology around men and what is a man and what a man is supposed to do and behave, but you don't see any kind of alignment of that on women, essentially. So, in my opinion, this election will play a crucial role for young men, because if Donald Trump were to lose and Kamala Harris were to win, you would see a lot of chaotic policies and maybe even world war. As you've seen, North Korea has already started supplying Russian troops and are already fighting in Ukraine, I believe. So, in my opinion, yes, this is like one of the most crucial elections for young men in their lifetimes. Definitely my lifetime. So, again, if you like this video, I want you to make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. It took a lot to put this video together, so I appreciate any of the likes, any views. I really appreciate y'all tuning in for this special live stream. Again, hit that follow button for updates on new content. We are working on a new project, so we're going to be doing our first movie. So make sure you hit that follow button. We're going to be giving you updates on that movie and our potential breakdown of that movie. So again, FM Podcast, I'm your host, the Black Man. We'll see you next time.